So I want to ask, we do have a few people who are kind of newcomers, and I wonder if you've ever heard about a 5-step spiritual mind treatment before. Okay, yeah, okay, good. Because sometimes we just plunge in, and everyone's like, what are we talking about? But Robert did an opening treatment this morning to kind of get us settled, and spiritual mind treatment is something that we use. It's a wonderful spiritual practice, and here in religious science, we've kind of come up with a way to teach it so that anyone can learn it. There's nothing really mysterious about it, so it's easy to learn. And so there are 5 steps. And today, my talk is called The First Step. But I just want to say, I wasn't actually thinking about spiritual mind treatment when I came up with the title, The First Step. I don't know why. I was thinking of, think of the first step. There's so many first steps. There's a first step that a baby takes. There's the first step at the bottom of a staircase. We're climbing higher and higher. There's the one that I was really thinking about, which is the first step in a 12-step program. That was in my mind to begin with, was just like Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I have a book called The Recovery Bible, and it's got the big book, and then it's got a wonderful book by Ralph Waldo Trine, and it's got a book by Emmett Fox, and there's some kind of conjunction between what we teach and their principles, right? Spiritual principles. Nobody has a monopoly on how to teach about spirit. Nobody has a monopoly on here's exactly what you have to do. So I'm sure that a lot of you know about 12-step programs, and Alcoholics Anonymous is the oldest program. It's kind of spread out. So there's Overeaters Anonymous and all kinds of different 12-step programs, because it's an idea that works for people. And I actually wanted to read the 12 steps to you. So if I say the word alcohol and that's not your issue, just think my issue, right? Whatever your issue is, or if you don't have an issue, great. So first, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, our issue, that our lives had become unmanageable. Second, that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Third, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of our lives. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all the persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics or other people with similar issues, and to practice these principles in our affairs. That's the 12 steps. Do those sound a little bit familiar? Becoming aware of what's going on, of making new choices, of getting a plan, and being willing to let Spirit or God to recognize Spirit or God as our source that we can turn to. Let's put it that way. So now, 12-step members should remain anonymous. right? That's the thing. It's very important that they remain anonymous. So, but on the other hand, I happen to be the member of a family where many of my predecessors successfully used Alcoholics Anonymous, and so I'm very grateful to the program. It straightened out our family to a large degree. And my mother, who founded this center, chose to speak about her relationship with the 12-step program, and she was very deeply involved in AA before she started really deeply studying New Thought and became a minister. So the thing that I have gradually come to realize is that there actually is a close relationship between New Thought and the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. In fact, I think you all have heard of Emma Curtis Hopkins, who was one of the early New Thought teachers. Well, she had a lot of people who were her followers or were studying what she taught. And there was actually a farm in Connecticut where they had a spiritual retreat that was used by her followers. And the farm was called Ministry of the High Watch. So I think it was like 1929 or something like that, Bill W. and his friends, the founder of AA, went on a retreat, I suppose, there. And they were so like-minded. The person who was running it, the woman who was running it, was so happy about their program. She actually ended up having them take over her farm to use as a recovery center. And so I just want to share that because I never knew that. And I think it's kind of beautiful, that different spiritual avenues can be so close and cooperate so strongly. So, when you think about their first step, I think it's interesting. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, the issue, and that our lives had become unmanageable. So now, in our center, we do talk a little bit about taking stock, basically taking stock of where you are. How is my life going? Do I feel satisfied? Are there aspects of my life that I would like to change? And then when we do our 5-step treatment, we don't have a step called that. Instead, we have something we write called the purpose of my treatment. So the purpose of my treatment is a result of taking stock and seeing where we really are. What would we like to keep? What would we like to change? When Larry read the passage by Ralph Waldo Trine, he was talking about how our thoughts begin to change our lives. Our thoughts are forces that actually have an impact on our lives. So I just thought that I wanted to share that idea that the first step of the 12 steps, that we're powerless, is kind of important. And sometimes we might overlook it because, we haven't hit rock bottom. We're just kind of plugging along, right? So we can overlook. But I think that we teach, when you look at your life, we usually say, see the good, look to the good, be grateful. But we also need to be honest. We need to practice truth-telling. There's no sense in fooling yourself that what is actually happening is not actually happening. We're not going to know what needs changing if we don't know what's going on. So I'll read a little more from Ralph Waldo Trine. And he wrote this in 1897. So this is a long time ago. But it's perfectly true. It's true today. He wrote, "The optimist is right. The pessimist is right. The one differs from the other as light from the dark, yet both are right. Each is right from his own particular point of view. And this point of view is the determining factor in the life of each person. This point of view determines as to whether they will have a life of power or of impotence, a life of peace or of pain, a life of success or a life of failure." And then he goes on to talk about how we make our own experience and whether we're going to end up feeling like we're in heaven or we're in hell. And then he talked about, well, what is heaven and hell? And I wanted to share that part with you. He goes on about, he says, the word heaven means harmony. But the word hell is from the Old English word hell, meaning to build a wall around, to separate. To be held was to be shut off from something else. So he said, now if there is such a thing as harmony, there must be that something that one can be in harmony with, in right relations with. For to be in right relations with anything is to be in harmony with it. And then he says, and again, if there is such a thing as being held, H-E-L-L-E-D, not like held, not like holding you, but held, shut off, separated from, there must be that something from which one is held, shut off, or separated. When we feel powerless, we feel disconnected. And the prefix dis, D-I-S, means apart from, not, none. So we have, instead of trust, we have distrust, discomfort, distraught, distracted, diseased, disconnected. And many people who join 12-step groups feel a sense of distress. You know, maybe they have hit what we call rock bottom. But we don't have to hit rock bottom in order to admit that we have some kind of an issue that we would like to deal with. You know, we don't have to let our lives crash and burn before we start over. You know, when you do hit rock bottom, it's suddenly crystal clear, right? That it's time to start over. But most of the time, most of us aren't really in that state, hitting rock bottom. Instead, sometimes we're soaring, and other times we're just like sputtering along. You ever experienced that? Like, I'm so energetic. Well, I'm not really that. I'm not really that energetic. You know, we're feeling underpowered, feeling like we're struggling, not totally in hell, but getting a little too close, you know, getting despondent. So, simple examples. If a person is sick, right, it's good to notice that you're sick, admit that you're sick, and take better care of yourself. Do something. Get a treatment from a practitioner. Take an aspirin. Whatever is the right thing for you. You know. You think that's funny? We do that. We're not against anything, really. We do what's right. But then, don't you sometimes find that then once you're feeling better, you're kind of like, oh, well, now I'm fine. Now I can do whatever it was I was doing, stay up late, or, you know, stop eating vegetables and fruits, whatever it was you were doing that sort of got you worn down. That's just an example of, we soar, we get healthy, and then we're like, blah, blah, blah. Same thing. If you're having issues with your budget and your finances, you really get down to earth and figure out your budget, then you get things straightened out, and it's like, oh, well, here's my credit card, right? I'm good. Right? So we go back and forth a little bit. And the truth is, when things are good, they do feel heavenly. And when things get rough, they do feel hellish. And these are the ups and downs of life that we have been trained to take for granted. What goes up must come down, right? Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. It only seems that way when we're feeling alone. Alone, when I say alone, I don't mean lonely. Right? Lonely is, I can cure loneliness because I have a telephone and I can call a friend. Or I can call my aunt. I can call one of you. Right? So loneliness is easy. But aloneness, feeling alone, is feeling disconnected from our source. That's feeling apart, walled off, separated. So if you ever felt alone, pay attention to it. So to me, our first step is the recognition of our source. And when you feel alone, you're not recognizing your source. You're just feeling walled off from what is actually the source of life. Now, when Robert was reading the candle lighting, he said, something like, the nature of spirit is joy. And I think of one of your songs, joy. What is the nature of spirit? Well, we teach that spirit is self-aware. Spirit becomes self-aware. And when spirit becomes self-aware, it is joy. And that is us, too. When we become truly self-conscious, steeped in gratitude for life, connected to our source, if you reach that, and maybe it's not 24/7, but occasionally, when you do meditation, when you listen to a song, you can sense this sense of joy. Our source is joy. So when I was studying to be a minister, and they had me take some, crazy classes, and one of them was on the Gnostics and early, Mesopotamian early religions, and they talked about Ishtar, I guess, and I got this picture of this old goddess as discovering she was alive and just like wrecking mayhem on all of the world with a spirit of joy, because they taught that she wasn't just like creating nice things, she was also creating war and all these things. And there's quite a few religions in the world that talk about, usually individual gods, not like we talk about the ultimate spirit, but they talk about individual gods who are so joyously creating all kinds of trouble, right? When you hear the stories about those Roman gods on Mount Olympus, they're just creating trouble for people because it's so much fun or something, right? But that's not what we teach. We teach that you just need to keep drilling down from things that appear to be our source to our true source. So if you have a picture of God as a person in the sky, if you have a picture of God as a he or a she, step back. Step back to the very base, which is looking at life as the thing itself, this underlying welling out of spirit, just welling out. And it wells out through us, and it wells out through the plants, and it wells out through the ocean. I mean, this is life, and it's our universe. We don't know the extent of it. We know that it is always in expression. It is always growing and expanding, and our lives are part of it. So, going on. So last week, Reverend Maureen gave a really good inspirational Memorial Day talk. If you were here, it was really nice. And so afterwards, I was thinking about history, the history of our nation, and the history of each one of us, and how that brings us to this present moment, right? Our past brings us to this moment of now. And actually, that was Memorial Day last weekend, and in a few days now it's going to be the 80th anniversary of D-Day. For me, it's almost like these things keep echoing through our world. Things in the past echo into our lives, just like I'm sure you find that things in your own personal past tend to echo through your lives. Hopefully, if they're negative, they get a little weaker each time around. That's why I like to think of them as echoes, not, we don't really have to repeat ourselves. We can learn. That's a wonderful thing. But in thinking about that, you have to realize something about the past and about time. It's really quite flexible. So if you think about World War II or the Vietnam War, it doesn't always seem like it's that long ago. There's a certain way of thinking about it, and it could be like yesterday, in a way. And I think it's also true about distance. If you think about distance, so I have a friend in Wisconsin. When I talk to her on the phone, it seems like she's next door. I really have that impression. She's not next door, of course. She's far away, but it feels like both time and distance are flexible. It's how we perceive them. And I know Reverend Maureen talks a lot about the quantum nature of the universe, and that's this idea that we're so connected. We're just amazingly connected that we can know things. We can get in touch with, it feels like we're getting in touch with our feelings about something. It's kind of what it feels like. So, now, if anyone here likes to read or watch science fiction movies, I don't know, I kind of sometimes do. There's this recurring idea that people instantly travel through space and time in some way, like beam me up Scotty in Star Trek, or you have the warp drive, or going through wormholes, all of these things. It's not a new idea either. It's an idea that humans have had for a really long time. So a number of years ago, like 2005, I remember I was in Sikkim, traveling in Sikkim in the Himalayas, and we visited a Buddhist temple. And the person who was showing us around the temple said absolute straight face that it had been founded by a lama who had flown there over the mountains from Tibet or somewhere. Like, okay, fine. It's not for me to say it's imagination. It seems like imagination to me, but we do have these thoughts about time travel and space travel and magical things happening. So I was really intrigued by a recent article I saw in Popular Mechanics. They're working on this now. Well, they've been working on it a long time. But suddenly they had this theoretical breakthrough about a potential design for traveling through the universe faster than the speed of light. And the idea, as I understand it, which is not very well, is that a human being would be inside a warp bubble, and to a person who was looking from the outside, it would seem that the warp bubble was traveling as fast as the speed of light or faster, but to the person inside the bubble, it wouldn't seem that way at all. They would be having a much slower experience of time. so that when they arrived at wherever they were going, instead of it seeming like it took 5 light years, it would seem like it took 5 days. That somehow you could have this inside the bubble and outside the bubble, totally different. Of course, it said, we don't think this is going to happen 2 times soon, because right now it would take all the energy, I don't know, somehow 2 Jupiters or something crazy like that. But it's interesting to think that physicists are actually working on this idea that time and space might actually be flexible. Now, I am, not planning on getting in a work bubble or looking forward to it or going to Mars or any of that, but I do find that these little bits of scientific validation can help us along in our spiritual journey, help us sort out what is probably so from what is just a wild pipe dream. Because not everything, we say with God all things are possible, but we also say with God all things are possible according to natural law, right? I'm just not going to turn into a frog. It's not happening. Time warp bubble or not, it's not happening. But as we get connected with our source, we do want to be honest. Don't just make up fantasies about what it's like. We teach and we believe that God, or the divine universality, is omnipresent. That means present everywhere at the same time. In the dictionary it says omnipresent is like all enveloping, but I have to disagree, because all enveloping would mean that there was something separate that got enveloped. There's nothing about us that's separate from source. We are manifestations, individualizations, points of particularization is what we sometimes think about it. So our life is a spiritual life. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. There's only one thing, the thing itself, universal spirit. Life is a unity. It's not a duality. If you're experiencing hell instead of heaven, it's time to tear down that wall. Maybe not tear it down, just allow it to dissolve. That's what we do through meditation. We just allow it to dissolve. We teach and believe that spirit makes everything out of itself because it is all there is. And so, although we're never going to encompass God or spirit, we will always be in God and of God. So Ralph Waldo Trine again wrote that the great central fact of the universe is that spirit of infinite life and power that is back of it all, that animates all, that manifests itself in and through all, that self-existent principle of life from which all has come, and not only from which all has come, but from which all is continually coming. He wrote that we are partakers of the life of God, and though we differ from God in that we are individualized spirits, while God is the infinite spirit, including us, as well as everything else beside. Yet, in essence, the life of God and the life of a person are identically the same. And so we are one. The difference is not in the essence or in the quality. It's just in the degree. So he gave the example of, if you could imagine an infinite lake of water, and then you could imagine a little pond of water. They're both water. There's no difference. It's essentially the same thing. So, when we take the first step, there's something that we need to do before we take that first step, which is becoming more self-conscious, becoming more self-aware. And when we become self-aware, we then are able to take that first step of recognizing Spirit as our source. So, yeah, I've got about 3 more pages to read, but I think that's enough for one morning. Go ahead.
That'll be the second step.
Yeah, maybe next week. Anyway, oh no, I'm almost done. Oh, okay, I'll finish it. Yeah, so, okay. So, it's just a little bit. My question is, are you wondering why I was talking about time travel? Why did I even talk about time travel? It's part of this idea that we live in this infinite now. We live in this omnipresent here. And yet, somehow, even though we know that, it's all one, it's all good, it's all perfect, we have this amazing ability to perceive life bit by bit in a linear fashion. We actually can see time passing. We actually can walk across this room and know how big the room is. We have this wonderful sensitivity to time and space that's part of our human condition also. So we're not just infinite source, we're also we have this wonderful skill of being able to sing songs, write poetry, create families and have friends. And it's the truth, so that sometimes even if you feel overwhelmed or separate or like you're going through hell, just admit it. Admit it's the truth. Maybe copy that first step of the 12-step program. Admit we were powerless. And then open our lives to the power of Spirit. And then let go of it. Let go of this illusion of unworthiness that we can get caught up in. The illusion of powerlessness or aloneness. And open your heart to that power which is greater than ourselves, that can restore us to sanity, peace, and joy in the here and the now. So that's my advice. Take the first step, recognize the nature of universal wholeness and of good unfolding. Because this is the power for good. And it is greater than we are, and we can use it. And when we keep our thought stayed with Spirit, when we keep our mind and our thoughts true to this hour of the one power, this idea of the one power, the one mind, then it's so easy to take the next step, which we call our first step of recognition, identification, and claiming our good. So this month we're going to be starting a series on working with spiritual principles. Next week, Practitioner Robert is going to talk a little bit about working with the idea of help, right? So that's going to be great. And we've got some more topics. And I want to invite you, if you have a topic that you would like us to address, this is the perfect time. So, during fellowship, we're having our cake and eating it too, right? If you have anything that you would like us to address, please let me know.